Hello and welcome to another episode of the Big Rican on Sports podcast. I am your host, I'm the Big Rican. Today is Sunday, June the 12th. If I don't know what day it is, I just kind of look at my phone and realize it's the 12th, 2022, and let's talk about what's been going on with the New York Mets. Well, the lead has shrunk. As of today, the New York Mets have I believe it's a 5 or 6 game lead in the division, which has been trimmed tremendously due to the Mets really on a tough road trip. You see me looking down. It's 5.5, excuse me. They're 5-5 in their last 10, but the problem is Atlanta's won 10 in a row. But let's talk about what we've gone through so far this season as Met fans. And let's start at the very beginning. And let's start with Jacob deGrom has not made a start yet. Let's start with Max Scherzer's on the injured list. Let's start with Tyler McGill made his first start in a few weeks on Friday. This team is built different. They've had good starts from David Peterson. Carlos Carrasco has been the cookie of old. Taijuan Walker's been good. The guys who have filled in to spot start have been very good. Trevor Williams being one of them. David Peterson being another. So the Mets have had an interesting season so far. As you can see behind me, the 7-Line Army hoodie is on proud display for one big reason. Last night, the 7-Line Army invaded Anaheim in an 11-6 loss by the Mets to the Angels. Listen, the Angels did it the way the Angels do it. Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout had big nights. Sorry, I'm opening a drink. What are you going to do? They're the two best players in the league, and they had big nights, and that's just the way it works. So here we are, June the 12th. The Mets have a 5.5 game lead in the National League's Eastern Division. They have one of the best records in baseball. You really can't complain if you're a Met fan, or can you? And that's what we're going to talk about for the next little bit. Let's go over some of the other moves the Mets have made in season, and let's start with they have released Robinson Cano, which brought joy to this man's heart because I didn't want him on the team to begin with. Who, by the way, right now is playing in AAA for San Diego because he's trying to hold on. Huge move in my opinion. They freed up Jeff McNeil to be the just about everyday second baseman until Luis Guillorme decided to turn himself into Roberto Alomar. Just doesn't hit right-handed. Doesn't hit as many home runs either. A magician with the glove, competent with the bat. You can't get mad at what the Mets are doing right now in the field. So how are they doing it? Like I said, we have the injuries to deGrom and Scherzer. We've had some inconsistency in the front end of the bullpen. Edwin Diaz has blown a game or two here and there, but he's been overall very good. So what's been the issue? What's been the thing with the Mets that's kept them going? Well, there's a lot of things. And I'm going to start at the top with Steve Cohen, who basically has said, I'm going to put a winner on the field for this fan base. Which, thank you, Steve. It's about time we had an owner in the box that believed in that within the last decade. Because after 2006, or 2008, I don't think the Wilpons cared much. So then we go down to the baseball people, and we talked about Sandy Alderson, we talk about Billy Epler, who have put together a roster that is able to withstand injuries and extended periods of time out of the rotation for both deGrom and Scherzer. Various injuries throughout the season. Francisco Lindor, of course, missed his first game of the season during the Dodgers series for slamming his hand in the door. Sidebar on that, I'm a little upset with my team for that. I think the Mets of the 80s would have given him a giant foam finger from the Rangers as to keep his finger safe. Billy Epler put together a roster and has a minor league system now that has guys contributing on every level. And we see that there's more in the future that's going to come up. You have what people are calling the best prospect in all of minor league baseball in Francisco Alvarez behind in Double-A, who possibly could be in AAA before the end of the year and maybe a September call-up. You have guys like Matt Allen and Ronnie Mauricio and players like that of that ilk that are in the minor leagues that are going to be coming up, that if they're not immediate impact on the field for the Mets, they're going to be trade chips. And they're going to bring in talent, and they're going to bring in players that are going to help this team win a championship. But then we have the guys who are on the field. And I want to start with the man in the middle, and that's Francisco Lindor. I said when they signed him, and I told my father this, and I backed it up and talked about it again this week. I said Francisco Lindor was going to be much like Carlos Beltran because Carlos Beltran had a terrible first year in New York. He was the big money free agent that Omar Minaya brought in after the 2005 near miss and fallen apart down the stretch. He brought in Carlos Beltran as the big ticket free agent. Hi, Bobby. Beltran's 2005 was horrific. I mean horrific. He hit maybe 260. I think he hit 16 homers and drove in 50-some runs. Who does that sound like? Sounds like Francisco Lindor, who signs the biggest contract in MLB history, has a subpar 2021, run in with the fans, all sorts of stuff. And now in 2022, Francisco Lindor, in my opinion, should start the All-Star game for the National League of Shortstop. So Met fans, get on it that are listening to me. Let's go to his buddy across the diamond in the polar bear, Pete Alonso. Can we say first legitimate Met MVP candidate not named Jacob deGrom in many a year? Pete is having a great season. I'm pretty sure, and don't quote me on it because I'm not 100% positive, but I will look it up right now, that Pete actually leads the major leagues in RBIs. Let's go to stats. He's got a 905 OPS. He's got 17 dingers, 55 runs batted in. He is having a phenomenal season. I can't say enough about what Pete is doing. And Pete is doing it. He's getting drilled every other night, basically. He's had an injury to the hand, which he comes back, and his first at-bat back, he hits a rocket. Ended up being a double play, but when you hit it at a guy in the shift, it's going to be a double play. Shockingly, his counterpart at first base is no longer with the team, and that's Dom Smith. He's been sent down to Syracuse. I have a feeling Dom Smith will be a part of the trade deadline package that brings the Mets either the bat or the arm that they're so badly going to need come that time. But everybody has contributed. This roster has gone 1 through 26, and no game showed that bigger than the game last Sunday against the Dodgers in Dodger Stadium. When you have to, because of the top heaviness of the Dodger lineup, bring in Edwin Diaz to pitch to Mookie Betts and Trey Turner and Freddie Freeman. Flip that, Freeman and Turner. Turner hits third in that lineup. You have to pitch him in the 8th inning. And then you have Seth Lugo falter in the 10th. And then Adolis Medina, of all people, come in and gets a save out of nowhere. But in that game, everybody contributed. Lindor hit a home run. Lindor hit a home run. Lindor hits the double before Pete's double to tie the game. Pete Alonso, if he ever goes to the Dodgers, is going to hit like 80. Because he's hit 11 dingers in 17 games at Dodger Stadium. That's an insane amount of home runs in a short amount of time. And he's owned Walker Buehler in the big leagues after Walker Buehler owned him in the minors. In college. But they had to use 1 through 26. Eduardo Escobar's had big games, including hitting for the cycle against San Diego last week. You've had, even when he was here, Dom Smith get a big hit to drive in big runs. You get J.D. Davis drives in the run to win the game against the Dodgers. This is a team that is built to win now and has a foundation to win for years to come. The question is, can they hold off the now surging Atlanta Braves? With the news we got this week about Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom, I think the Mets will be able to do this. If they can survive the next 4 weeks, and let's talk about their schedule for the next 4 weeks. They finish up the series today in Anaheim. They are the night game on ESPN. Then home for Milwaukee. Home for Miami, which is the first time we're going to see Miami. That's a 4-game wraparound series. Then they go to Houston, to Miami, home for Houston, and we are at the end of June. In July, they have, 4 weeks, so that's the next 3. 4 home for Texas, at Cincinnati, and then in Miami, 7th, 8th, and 9th of July. To round it out, the 10th, they are in Miami, and then Monday, Atlanta comes, or they go down to Atlanta for the first time this season. The next 4 weeks are going to be critical. You have to win the series against the Brewers, even though they're a first-place team. Oh, by the way, not to take shots when no one's talking about it, the Mets have as many wins against teams with a 500 or better record as the Yankees have played games against teams with 500 or better record. So for all the fans of the Pinstripes out there, slow your roll. You haven't hit the hard part of your schedule yet. The Mets have played the majority of their hard schedule. The Phillies have been surging since the firing of Joe Girardi. Way overdue. How this dude got another job after what he did with the Yankees blows my mind. And people will say to me, Mike, well, what did he do with the Yankees? He had one of the best young cores in the league. And he didn't know how to manage it. Same thing happened in Philadelphia. Although in Philadelphia, their GM ought to be slapped because their bullpen and their starting rotation is an absolute abomination. They've also had some injury issues in Philly. Didi's not playing right now. Bryce Harper's been limited to being the DH all year. So you can see where Girardi would have some problems. But again, you got a winning team there, kid. You can't get it done. You should in that ballpark. You should be able to slug your way to at least a wild card berth, and then when you get bounced in the playoffs because you face the good pitching, then you blame the front office. Oh, I don't have enough good pitching. You had it all set there, kid. What the hell are you doing? Back to the Mets. You have to win the series against Milwaukee. You have to win tonight to win the series against the Angels. You've got to win the series against Milwaukee. You have got to take 3 out of 4 against the Marlins, who are a very tough team. In Houston, that's got to be a split. At Miami, got to take 2 out of 3. Against Houston at home, again, another split. So what's that? Win tonight, 1. 2 against Milwaukee, that's 3. 3 against, that's 6, 7, 9. You got to win 10 out of your next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. You got to win 10 out of your next 15 in order to start putting some distance between you and the rest of that division. But sitting at 39 and 22 after 71 or 51 games, 61 games, excuse me. It's the second best 61 game start in Met history. Only one team has played better, and that is a team that was, well, we still talk about that team 36 years later. Although I think we'll be talking about this team for a long time too. And in good reason, not like last year, which we'll talk about that one for a long time, and it'll be all bad reasons. You are starting to see some of the depth the Mets have. Khalil Lee come back up after he was up a little bit last year for a cup of coffee and didn't play very well. Well, Khalil Lee hit one last night that he knew was gone when it left the bat to left center. He's a left-handed hitter. Nick Plummer has come out of nowhere to have a couple of huge games and fill in very nicely when Starling Marte and Brandon Nimmo have both been hurt. Marte currently on the shelf with a quad issue. Happened the same, I want to say the same at bat, that Alonso got drilled by Yu Darvish in San Diego that cost Pete Alonso a couple of games. Although J.D. Davis has filled in nicely at first base. I didn't know J.D. Davis could play first base that way. So they're built to win, and they're winning games. I mean, 5-5 in your last 10 with those injuries and the trip they're on. That's not an easy trip to go on. It's not an easy trip to go 6-4. But if you're going to go 5-5 when you hit the Dodgers, the Padres, and the Angels, I'll take it. Don't go 4-6. You got to go 5-5. You got to hope you get some help today from Atlanta in losing, and their winning streak getting snapped, and then you got a 6.5 game lead as you come home to face Milwaukee, a very good team that right now is in the top of the Central. So let's set up the rest of this season right now. All-Star balloting has started. I put in my first ballot. I did not start 9 Mets, so please no one accuse me of that. I did, however, start 2, and that's Francisco Lindor, and that's Pete Alonso. Pete made the All-Star team in 19. He did not make the All-Star team in 21 because he had not a very good first half, but he did win the Home Run Derby. The only All-Star the Mets had last year was Taijuan Walker because DeGrom was hurt, but DeGrom was elected to play in the game. So, yeah, I think the Mets get 2 this year, maybe 3. Edwin Diaz has had a very good season. Maybe even some back channel support for Cookie Carrasco, who until last night had been absolutely brilliant. A rough night last night, but everybody has a rough start. I heard a story once where someone said, in the major leagues you get 30 starts, but really it's 3 sets of 10. It's the 10 that are phenomenal. It's the 10 that are terrible. And it's the 10 that are you fight through, but you get the job done. Well, he had one of his 10 on the back end yesterday. I've seen him have a couple in the middle here, and he's had a couple on the other end. So let's hope this 10 turns into this 12 and this 12, and that's 6. I don't think that's too much to ask. So we got the All-Star break coming up in about a month, which is hard to believe. The trading deadline is now August 2nd for this year. They moved it back a few days because of the lockout. I will have an All-Star special and that will piggyback with a trade deadline special in the same night. Alex, last week on the Wise Guys show on Jim's channel, has already accepted an invitation. I will extend the invitation to 1 or 2 more guys to have on. And we'll have a good time talking about the trade deadline and talking about baseball in general and the All-Star game, which I hope will be crowning Pete Alonso as his third consecutive home run derby championship. That'd be fun to hear. So what's coming up on the horizon for this team? Well, it's a tough schedule for the next little bit. Dates with first-place teams like Houston, Milwaukee. Finishing up tonight with the Angels. Again, just going back to the schedule. You know, in there you're going to get home for Texas at Cincinnati, where the Mets have played very well. And then right before the All-Star break, you get at Atlanta and at Chicago to play the Cubs, and then home for San Diego shortly thereafter, with the first Subway Series tilt July 26th and 27th at Citi Field. So a couple other things about the Mets real quick. Then I want to touch on some all-around baseball stuff, and then we'll get into a little preview of something coming up at the end of the week. So what do I think the Mets need to do moving forward besides win 10 out of the next 15? I think they have to stay consistent. They have to keep pitching well. They have to get the bullpen, give the starters the support the bullpen has. I think for the next couple starts, we're going to see Tyler McGill and David Peterson piggyback each other, which worked very well on Friday night. Buck Showalter needs to keep pushing these buttons. And more importantly, these players, when given the opportunity off the bench, have got to keep producing. This is a team that has had to go 1 through 26 on the roster. And they just need to hold these guys off for a little bit. Because if Scherzer and DeGrom come back and they are healthy, I will say it now on June the 12th, the National League East is a wrap. With a 6-game lead, an offense that is built to score runs and score them in a multitude of ways, not just hit balls out of the ballpark. And those 2 horses at the top of the rotation, healthy, forget it. Forget it. It's over. It's over. But you got to keep doing the small things. You got to keep hitting the ball the other way when they're shifting on you. You've got to keep hitting well with runners in scoring position. You cannot fall in love with 2 bloops and a blast. You've only got one guy in the lineup who hits blasts more than anybody else, and that's Pete. And Pete is actually driving the ball the other way. He's beating the shift. Mark Canha did it the other night. I've seen Brandon Nimmo slash balls down the third baseline for extra base hits. Same thing with Lindor. You've got to keep doing the things that you're doing now. You cannot take your foot off the gas. Yes, you're going to get blown out. In 162 games, you're going to take one on the chin every now and again. But the next night, you got to rebound and win like the Mets have done. They've only lost 3 in a row once all year. Win tonight, get home for Tuesday night against Milwaukee, and handle your business at home where you've been a great team. Your lead can grow again. Atlanta's not going to go from here to the end of the year by winning every game. It's not going to happen. Build the lead back up. If it gets to double digits again, and we're talking post-All-Star break, and those dudes are healthy, you have enough to win this division without breaking a sweat. And you can get this team back to the postseason for the first time in 6 years. And then, when you got a series where you got to face DeGrom, Scherzer, and Chris Bassett 1 through 3, you don't lose many of those. And that is where this team is built for the postseason. Their approach at the plate and their starting pitching is built for October. Especially in October in New York when it's cold and the ball doesn't fly. So I've rambled about the New York Mets for 20 minutes. Let's get into a couple other things around baseball that I've really enjoyed. Back to the Mets real quick. For the first time in his career, Carlos Carrasco's father got to see him pitch. I was at Citi Field a week or two ago. And it was absolutely outstanding. If you can go find it on video, watch it. Because it's the first time that he's seen his son pitch. I was shocked at that because he was in Cleveland for so long. But then also Cookie had cancer in 2019. Surprised the father didn't come up for that. Other things that have made me smile in Major League Baseball this year? Well, the first one is very simply the fact that the races are setting up just like a lot of people have figured that they would. The Dodgers are out in the NOS. They're doing great things. The Central's being run by Milwaukee. The Mets are running the East. But the one race that I think is going to be exciting down to the wire is the American League Central. Because, oh look, who's only a few games behind that juggernaut that all of a sudden is the Minnesota Twins? The Cleveland Guardians. Natalie and I said it on the opening day show with Willie. I changed my mind and I said I thought the Mariners would be the other wild card team in the American League. Look out for Cleveland. That offense, these kids came up together in the minor leagues. And now they're seeing success in the big leagues. Jose Ramirez signs the big contract to stay in Cleveland, and he has been the MVP of the American League. I don't care what Aaron Judge has done. I don't care he hasn't played anybody yet. Again, the Mets have as many wins against teams with a 500 or better record as the Yankees have games played against teams with an above 500 record. Does that mean the National League's a better league than the American League? Possibly. Does it mean the Yankees have been in the soft part of their schedule? Yes, it does. When they get to the hard part of their schedule and they see some better pitching, let's see what happens. It's not me being a hater, it's me being real. So the last thing I've truly enjoyed about this baseball season has been the fact that people have paid attention. Maybe for some of the wrong reasons, maybe for some of the right reasons, but it seems like people are paying attention to baseball again. Oh, that and A-Rod's no longer on the Sunday Night Baseball broadcast. It's a big bonus for me. So let's get into what's coming up on the Big Rican on Sports itself. Going to have the All-Star Game show in a couple weeks. I will have another episode where I dive into my other sports we're going to get into recruiting and what we see coming up for Ohio State in the coming season. September 3rd is not that far away when they face Notre Dame at the Horseshoe on the first week of the season in prime time. We will get into what the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to do this offseason. It's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Cavs. They have some very big decisions to make. First and foremost, what to do with Colin Sexton. I don't know how much we will be covering the Browns on this podcast for the rest of the year. It really depends on how everything goes with what's going on. You've heard me talk a lot about it with Jim on the Wise Guys show, on what we call the Wise Guys After Dark, on his page where we take the filter off. I'm not too happy with that team right now. And it's not because I'm a Baker bro. It's because of what they've basically done. For a city that loves its football as much as Cleveland does, I think the Browns franchise has done things to do this town dirty. And I don't believe they should be celebrated like some people believe. But a special treat this Saturday night. It will be on the Big Rican channel on YouTube and on the Big Rican Facebook page. If I can get it to go there. If not, it'll just be on the Big Rican YouTube channel. Jim and I will do the clean version of the Wise Guys Sports Show on Saturday night at 8:30 p.m. with a very special guest, Natalie Turk, who does the Family of Baseball Extra Frames podcast with me. Unless there's a scheduling change, we'll be on with us at 8:30 on Saturday night. And we will go into the I'm not quite sure the word I want to use when it comes to the Browns, but the word I want to use I can only use on Jim's channel. Because it's getting a little bit more real now with stuff that's come out in the last couple of days. And we want to get not only a professional journalist's point of view on it, as Natalie is the beat writer for Cleveland Sports Illustrated for the Guardians. But Jim and I made a lot of jokes, both on my channel in the draft preview and on his channel with the Wise Guys shows after dark. We want to get a perspective on from someone who is going to have an opinion that's worth listening to. That's not just jokes. So we thought nobody better than Natalie to have on. If schedule does change, it will just be Jim and I. We will get into some other stuff besides that, but the majority of Saturday Night Show will be with Natalie, and we'll be discussing the Browns and Deshaun Watson and what's going to be coming up in the next few months. We will also touch on her opinion on Baker and Garoppolo and all those other guys, but we're going to focus a lot on the Browns on Saturday night. As always, Big Rican can be found on YouTube at Big Rican on Sports, on Facebook, Big Rican on Sports, Twitter at Big Rican on Sport, Anchor, Google, Spotify, Breaker, Pocket Cast, Radio Public. Ask Alexa, hey, play Big Rican, and it comes on. And remember, Spotify is a video podcast. For everybody listening, I will see you guys Saturday night with Jim and Natalie. Have a great weekend, or great rest of your Sunday. And yeah, I'll be on more. But with one graduating and an infant, it's not that easy. Have a good one, guys. And most importantly, let's go Mets.